Hi, I'm Ari Lynette, and it's time for some good old-fashioned makeup talk. So one thing I've been enjoying doing on my channel is talking about some of my petty grievances with makeup products. One series I've been doing is The Fix, where I talk in detail about fixing new makeup releases. And then I also did a video a while back which was Makeup Brands I Want to Fight, which was a lot more petty and humorous. And I really enjoyed doing both of those videos, and I really enjoyed getting into those specific releases. But that also gave me the idea that there's a lot of benefit to actually talking about releases in a more general way, not referring to one specific release, but referring to trends that have been coming up with releases, and that's what today's video is about. So today we are going to be talking about some indie makeup pet peeves. And I'm saying indie makeup pet peeves because this specifically refers to some trends I've been seeing within indie makeup palettes and other products other than palettes, because sometimes I think we forget there are other products in the makeup sphere other than eyeshadow palettes. But this refers to a lot of different bits and pieces of products. Some of them are going to sound incredibly nitpicky and incredibly petty, and that's why I've put it in the title. That's why this is the extra petty edition. But I really wanted to get this video out to, one, talk about some things that not a lot of people talk about in terms of makeup releases. Little things that kind of get on my nerves a little bit. And then I also wanted to use this video to act as a way of giving advice to makeup brands, whether it's an established indie makeup brand or someone starting out, just giving some advice of things that kind of annoy me, and possibly only me. And to be completely honest, this probably isn't a very useful resource at all, but it's entertaining, I guess? So I have 7 things. No, I have not suddenly turned to Miley Cyrus, but I have 7 different points to bring up in this video. And as always, little quick disclaimer, this video is purely for fun and for entertainment purposes. Whatever informational value comes out of it is kind of just a coincidence, but as always, I don't mean to offend anyone, I don't mean to cause uproar. These are simply some things that bother me, and if you think they sound incredibly petty and that it's quite pointless for me to talk about them, yeah, I kind of know that already, so tell me something I don't know. But enough disclaimers, let's talk about some indie makeup pet peeves, and also this can apply to bigger makeup releases too, but I had to get a short title. Regardless of the title, if you want to see my pet peeves with indie makeup releases and other releases, then don't go anywhere. Right, so the first thing I have to talk about is fonts. Oh yes, we're getting nitpicky. I have a confession to make. I am a font freak. A lot of people don't really care about it, and that's fine. There are bigger things in the world to care about than the type of writing on a product, whether it has serifs or not, whether it's italicized. It's quite a irrelevant thing, but what can I say? This shit matters to me. I really like fonts. I think that they're incredibly important in establishing a brand identity, a professional look, just overall the style of a product. I think it's really important to have a nice font. I just do. It's something I find to be very important. For example, a brand like Pepsi, if you look at the font on here, this is quite distinctive. It's fresh and modern, it's got the little wave on the E. If this was a font that you recognize from Microsoft Word, you'd probably be quite annoyed, because you'd be like, wait a minute, they didn't put that much thought into designing this product. And though it's not as extreme of a case with makeup releases, I still think with things like shade names and logos also, I think it's really important to consider fonts as something that is important to the look of a product. I mentioned Microsoft Word fonts and fonts that are very common and you can name, and having shade names in those fonts perhaps not being the best idea because it makes something look a lot more cheap and a lot more like they just put it together like in a basement or something. Not to be judgmental, but if I see any traces of Arial, Times New Roman or Copperplate Gothic, then I'm judging you. I find that looking at certain palettes, I'm drawn to the shade names and kind of looking at the font and being like, yeah, it's a little bit cheap. Which I know that's incredibly petty, that's incredibly superficial, but when you release a product, as much as the quality of the product itself is the most important thing, it's gotta look good. That's just the society we live in. Capitalism, baby. It needs to look good, and if you have a font that you can get off Microsoft Word, then people are gonna start noticing. Like if someone has like a notice up in Calibri, I notice immediately. If someone has a shop sign in Comic Sans, I'm hella judging. That's just something petty about me. Something I actually think is worse than having like a cheap font is an unreadable font. Say what you want about Arial, Times New Roman, etc. At least you can read them. If you have some weird, quirky, overly themed font, like I'm not against that overall, but you should be able to read the shade name. Like bare minimum. That's what a shade name is. Something you read. And if you can't read it, it's failed its job. So if you're making like a themed palette, then make sure that the font isn't overpowering the readability. I know it's a little bit of a weird thing to be banging on about fonts, but I'm a bit of a font freak. What can I say? Another petty thing with shade names is the way that shade names are written, particularly the case. When I say a case, I'm referring to either uppercase, lowercase, title case, or sentence case. When looking at a shade name, I prefer uppercase or lowercase, because I mean, you can't go wrong with uppercase. Like, just having it all in capital letters, easy peasy. Nothing wrong about that. I also find that lowercase is something that companies don't often do, but I think looks really attractive personally. Carity does all lowercase shade names, and they're really cool. And then I find that the two most polarizing ones are title case and sentence case. So title case, where every first letter of every word is capitalized, and sentence case, where the first letter of the first word is capitalized and the rest is not. Sometimes I find title case can end up looking a little bit tacky, but I find sentence case it's even worse. I personally think that a foolproof way of getting good looking shade names is just doing them in uppercase or lowercase. Like, I don't think mixing cases is a good idea, but I think it's possible. For example, I think Maybe Cosmetics gets away with it. They have theirs in title case and theirs look completely fine, but I find that others can't get away with that. However, I have another bone to pick. I don't remember where I saw this palette, but I saw a palette where it had one shade name in title case and another shade name in sentence case in the same palette. Pick one. If you're going to use a certain case in a shade name, pick one. Don't use multiple different cases. Imagine if you had one in capitals and then one in like lowercase, and then one in a sentence and one in title case. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's basic consistency. I think that people need to be very mindful of how they type out shade names. Again, so that the product looks good. The product is what people are buying into, and a lot of that is the appearance of it. So you need to be considerate of that. The next extra petty thing is terrible web design. Now, this is going to sound even more superficial, but the website is essentially the front of your shop. It's where people go to buy your product, it's where they go through the checkout process, it's where they look at products, it's where they interact with the brand in the most engaging way. Yeah, social medias exist, but at the end of the day, where do you buy the products? On the website. So your website needs to look good. If your website looks like a 2003 MySpace page, don't be surprised if I click the back button. And I know that sounds harsh, and that might not sound the nicest, but a tacky looking website or a basic, informal, unprofessional looking website, these days it just doesn't cut it, because there are so many makeup brands out there. Some of them have like amazing, revolutionary looking websites, but some of them have websites that aren't particularly revolutionary, but look fit to purpose. And you only have to do that bit to actually succeed. So if you're running a brand and the website isn't up to par, you really need to consider getting people in, especially if you have done it all by yourself and it isn't looking that good. There's no shame in getting professionals in, maybe going on your good sis Squarespace, your good sis Shopify, good sis Wix.com. Like, there are so many places to get a good website, and no, this is not sponsored by any of those companies, but I wouldn't be opposed to that. But a website is so important. Just like fonts, just like logos, it matters because you want people to get a good impression of the brand, and a lot of that is based on looks. So if your website looks terrible, fix it. So we've got the worst out of the way, let's get on to some things that are less trivial and petty things and are a little bit more substantial, that at least I think I sound more reasonable when I'm saying them. So the first one is shade by shade reveals. This is something that's very personal to me. I just don't like shade by shade reveals of palettes. I think it's fine for single shadows because they're single shadows and they aren't particularly meant to be sold as part of a cohesive unit. Some of them are, but most of the time single shadows just exist on their own. Same with lipstick shades. But for a palette, I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks this. I would much rather first see a picture of all the shades together to get an idea of the aesthetic of the palette, how it combines, how it all works together. Because that's such a big part of palettes for me, and that's what really matters to me, is that it works as a unit. I think that revealing the individual shades just means a lot less to me. It doesn't feel particularly significant, but the worst thing for me is that it drags out the reveal. It kind of makes this guessing game of, oh, what's it gonna build up into, when really I just don't want to play that game. And also, by the time it's been revealed and the whole process has been done, I kind of have stopped caring. This is just a personal matter for me. I don't like shade by shade reveals. I think that they drag out the marketing in a not healthy way. And I also think it serves no real purpose in terms of promoting the feel of the palette. Because I'm, again, the type of person that likes to see the palette all together as one cohesive unit. And that's what I like to get that surprise of seeing. I don't particularly care for finding out a shade every day and then there's it all together. I don't have time to piece things together. Barely any people have time to piece things together in this climate. I'm not opposed to shade previews altogether. I'd say preview one shade, two at the most. That's cool. Like, you have like two particular shades that really excite you and you think will be attractive to the people who are following you. Why not preview those? But not the whole palette. I do not like that way of working. In that same vein, I wanted to talk about long marketing campaigns that involve mock-ups. Now, mock-ups is a whole other thing. I'm not really a fan of when people are like, here's a mock-up of our new palette and it's gonna be coming out soon, because when you see a mock-up, you get a certain expectation of the product, of the certain saturations of colours, the finishes of colours, the appearances, and when it gets to that final product reveal, they can look different and you might have a different reaction to it by then and you might not want the product then. But the bigger thing for me is a long marketing campaign. I think that eyeshadow palettes aren't big budget movies. For like a big film, I've seen like the teaser poster be released like 9 months before the film, and that serves to build up anticipation for it. Eyeshadow palettes aren't the same thing as that. For me, there is a sweet spot of about a week of like maybe getting some teasers up, doing some promotion, maybe like a black and white picture. That's all good and true, but I think that if you draw it out too long, it's the same thing as before. It's draining any possible momentum out of the campaign. People get impatient, people move on to other things, because in the current climate of makeup releases, there's so much. And I think you need to keep people on their toes, and you need to act fast, and you need to respond, and have something that, yes, builds up anticipation, but does it effectively and quickly. I think there is purpose to teasing releases, but I think there's also a sweet spot in where you can tease a release and then unveil it very quickly and effectively, while still having that effective, exciting response, building up that tension. That's still all possible. But for me, anything longer than like a week or maybe two is just overkill, and by then I've stopped caring about the product. So the next item on my list is hashtags as shade names. Now, I've seen some brands use hashtags for shade names, and the vast majority of the time I don't like it. I find that it's tacky and dated. Yeah, I did say dated, and I think even though hashtags are still quite prevalent, there's something about them that reads very 2012, very dated, very how do you do fellow kids. I think that there isn't really anything you can say with a hashtag that can't be said in a normal shade name. I just think it doesn't make any sense to put a hashtag as a shade name. It's like either vapid teenager or like wine mom, and it doesn't really appeal to me in either context. I will say I tend to make an exception when it comes to more socially conscious topics. If someone has a hashtag as a shade name in that kind of context, then yeah, I can excuse that. I understand that. But if we're doing something like trivial, like hashtag wine night, hashtag no filter, hashtag living my best life, not what I'm looking for. You could probably just say it as a normal shade name. I don't think there's really much need for having hashtags as shade names unless you want to sound like a Morphe babe. And I mean, have you seen their product descriptions? That's not something I'm aspiring to in my life. So in short, hashtags as shade names is mostly a no. The last thing, and probably the most important thing to me, and the most make or break thing to me, is shock value and controversial shade names. I've seen certain indie brands go towards more controversial shock value topics and subjects for products and shade name. And it's clear to me that it's an opportunity to gain publicity. It's kind of the same way that brands these days use outrage tactics. It's like a brand using something controversial to drive up sales of a product. It's the similar thing with indie brands. It's them using something a little more controversial to gain awareness for them as a brand. And essentially it's a way to launch them. I get that, but also I think it's no bueno. Being controversial and edgy and all of that stuff, it doesn't make your brand special, it doesn't make your brand unique. It certainly doesn't make the brand desirable as far as I'm concerned. It makes the brand look desperate and ignorant. And I don't buy from brands that do that. If the products you're trying to promote are named trying to be edgy or offensive or like profiting off of something insensitively. And I just won't buy from the brand at all. Never mind the individual products, I will pull my support of a brand completely for that reason. Again, that's a personal thing for me and I don't put that criteria on other people, but as far as I'm concerned, I can simply decide for myself I'm not going to support this brand because, yeah, I don't appreciate shade names that I'm seeing from some brands. So let's not do that, because there are millions and millions and potentially even billions of words out there, so be careful with the ones you use, because shock value and controversy doesn't make a brand special. So that's all I've got today for my indie makeup pet peeves extra petty edition. So if you have any other things that I haven't mentioned in this video that you think are possibly some more petty gripes with certain trends that indie makeup brands are coming out with and you just want to talk about and sound off on, feel free to let me know in the comments because I'd love to see some other things. I mean, I've listed like 7 things that I think are kind of annoying trends coming out of brands and I'd love to hear more of them, and I'll probably be cursing myself for forgetting those things as well. So I'll be like, darn it, I could have included that too. But please do let me know. But thank you for watching this video. I've been Ari Lynette, you've been amazing, and keep it petty. Or don't, because it's not like we need to be petty all the time. And sometimes we can be wholesome too. However you may be, bye.
Thanks for watching.
Oh, and one more thing, just before we go, make sure you stay tuned on September the 20th to find out what's going to be happening on 9/27. Trust me, you do not want to miss this.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, give it a thumbs up and come say hi in the comments. You can find me on Twitter at @AriLynetteWork and on Instagram at AriLynette. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Love you for watching.